Discover the amazing secret to regain leg strength of a 40-year-old. Transform your life tonight. Jason's body felt like a vestige of its former self, a clunky machine struggling against the machinery of expectation. The 40-year-old warehouse manager, worn down by long hours and unyielding economic pressure, trudged through each day like a ghost in his own life. Just a decade ago, he dashed through marathons and tossed his children into the air with ease. Now, lifting a 5-pound bag of flour felt like hoisting a weight plate onto a barbell. He didn't just feel weary, he felt invisible. As he headed for the attic one rainy evening, simply in search of a distraction from the monotony, the air was thick with dust and uncertainty. Digging through neglected boxes, Jason uncovered a leather-bound journal that belonged to his grandfather, a man he idolized. The pages wore a delicate age, inscribed with words that dripped of determination and resilience. Each stroke was a testament to a life lived boldly against the odds. Flipping through the journal, Jason's breath hitched, captured by the stories of a man who, like him, knew the weight of family burdens and physical challenges. Would his grandfather, the athlete with unbroken spirit, still have faith in him? In a moment of reckless longing, Jason felt a long-dormant spark ignite within him. Maybe he could reclaim his strength. Inspired, he approached his children with newfound fervor, their curious eyes alight with adventure. They devised a training routine, turning playtime into a workout. Sprinting from the swing set, biking down the lane, racing in the backyard. It was wild, chaotic, and thrilling at first. Joy bubbled between them, momentarily lifting the weight pressing against Jason's chest. But behind the laughter lurked the quiet hum of resentment. The snickers of his colleagues echoed in his mind as they dismissed his transformation attempts as a midlife crisis. Were they right? Could he really turn back the clock, or was it all foolishness? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every stride his children took, Jason wrestled with doubt. Their laughter was a bittersweet soundtrack to his unease, the pleasure of their antics juxtaposed against the tightening knot in his stomach. After each exhausting workout, as he sank onto the porch steps, it hit him. He wasn't just training his legs. Friendships had frayed, bonds had stretched thin, and the solitude in his heart deepened. But there was a haunting promise lingering in the pages of his grandfather's journal. The tenuous coordination of strength and vulnerability danced in his mind. In moments of crippling uncertainty, Jason realized he yearned for more than just rediscovered leg strength. He craved to reconnect, to emerge from the shadows and stand vibrant in his children's world and his own. Tomorrow brought hope, yet dread clung to him like a second skin as he prepared for a community event. Would he stand in front of people and share his journey? Would his voice break the silence of his past insecurities? Or would it shatter into whispers of failure? The internal storm raged, colliding against every intention he set. All at once, he felt both terrified and liberated. The culmination of this journey sat at the tip of his tongue, yet it trembled beneath the weight of expectation. And as he prepared to speak in front of that anticipated crowd, Jason lingered on the edge of an abyss, where courage whispered to plunge into the unknown. Would the world wait in anticipation, or would it swallow him whole? Jason's heart raced as he approached the podium, a surge of energy mixing with the oppressive weight of doubt. The venue buzzed with conversation and laughter, a stark reminder of the vibrant life he had allowed to slip through his fingers. He scanned the crowd, seeing familiar faces hinting at skepticism and hidden mockery. The bright lights overhead felt blinding, almost mocking him, as if they too questioned his resolve. But in that moment, the words of his grandfather echoed in his mind, a soft, encouraging presence, reminding him that resilience often comes draped in vulnerability. He opened his mouth to speak, and the words hesitated on his tongue. Memories of marathons flooded his thoughts, moments of triumph shifting to anxiety. Yet with each deep breath, the voices of his children joined the fabric of his resolve. They were counting on him to show them that it was never too late to chase dreams. His throat tightened, and in that split second, he made a choice. He would not be invisible anymore. "Good evening, everyone," he began, voice steady, but the nervous tick beneath his skin betrayed him. He felt the air thicken. Their eyes leaned into him, eager or judgmental. He could not tell. "I'm Jason, and I want to talk about strength." He hesitated as he took in their expressions, wondering if they could see the layers of his vulnerability. He shared his story, each challenge, each failure, and the glimmer of hope he had found in the attic. The journal had been a doorway, a connection to a lineage of resilience. As he articulated the weight of burdens carried and the urgency of transformation, warmth spread through the crowd, juggling laughter and reflective nods. He watched as some faces softened, recognizing their shared struggles. But as the words flowed, mingling with encouragement and heart, the fear of failure loomed large. What if he stumbled or faltered? What if their latent skepticism flooded back? Yet with each moment he spoke, Jason felt himself shift, unfurling layers of self-doubt along the way. The realization hit him. Sharing his truth was its own form of strength. Here he was, not the idealized athlete, but a man fighting a battle with himself, and that authenticity resonated powerfully. As he finished his speech, applause erupted around him, muted at first, but then growing into a swell that filled the room. He stood there, momentarily stunned, the warmth of acceptance wrapping around him. But even as he basked in the momentary victory, a flicker of urgency sparked within. Speaking had ignited something deeper within him, urging him to lean into not just leg strength, but into every component of his life he had neglected. He felt his phone buzz in his pocket, pulling him from the euphoria of the moment. It was a message from a colleague, an invitation to a running group that trained every Saturday. Anxiety clawed at the back of his mind, reminding him of past humiliations, but buried beneath it was hope. The road to physical and emotional reclamation would be a grind, with each step echoing fragility. Jason inhaled deeply, focused on the crossroads ahead of him. Did he join that running group and confront the whispers of doubt that awaited him, or retreat into the safety of his own insecurities? The decision hung in the air, ripe with tension. It was time to push further, but the uncertainty pressed against him like weights held aloft. As he prepared to leave the podium, the cheering faded into the background, shadows emerging that asked, could he truly withstand the challenges ahead? The time had come to face not just his past failures, but the fears that clung like shadows. Would he take the leap into running again, or would he let fear dictate his next move? Jason found himself alone in his car, the roar of applause still echoing in his ears. With his heart racing, he ran his fingers over the steering wheel, imagining every curve of the road before him. It had been more than just a speech. It was a declaration of intent. But here he was, encapsulated by the safety of his vehicle, grappling with the genuine fear of stepping back into the world of running, a world he had shunned for so long. He replayed the invitation from his colleague in his mind. It was just a running group, just a casual gathering of people pursuing fitness. Yet, to him, it felt monumental, a fragile bridge between who he had been and who he aspired to be. Anxiety settled into the pit of his stomach. Images of past runs churned like storm clouds overhead, whipping up memories of stumbling, falling, and the cruel laughter of those who had once watched him. But the applause had been real. Was the approval of others a mere facade, or had he truly touched something in them? Confidence fluxed within him, surfacing in the wake of his earlier bravery. Pushing through personal barriers, he reached for his phone and stared at the message again. He could feel the answers bubbling within him, born from a moment of vulnerability. He longed for the exhilaration of pushing his physical limits once more, yet an instinctive wave of self-doubt pounded at his resolve. "Just do it, Jason," he muttered, a mantra against the rising tide of fear. But what if he had not changed? What if he still possessed the limitations that had plagued him from the start? He needed to confront those questions, and there was no better way than facing them head-on. It wasn't merely exercise, it was regaining control, re-establishing a commitment to himself. Deciding to take action, he shut off the car and stepped outside. The evening air was cool, remnants of summer fading into the significance of his choice. He walked to a nearby park, hoping the rhythm of nature would align his nerves. As he jogged down a familiar path, every step felt agonizingly heavy at first, the old ghosts pulling at his heels. Yet gradually, with each stride, his breath steadied and his heart lightened. He was reclaiming something lost, even if it was just a flicker. But Jason's mind churned faster than his legs. The journal had opened him up, inspired him to speak publicly, to confront fears, and now it beckoned him to action. Yet those wounds were still fresh, and each run carried with it the weight of his history. Could he truly move past the collective baggage of failure? The ground beneath his feet offered no easy answers, just the gravel crunching and the pulse of determination. After several rounds of jogging that evening, Jason felt his muscles burn and his breath quicken, but a new sensation stirred within him, a burgeoning resolve that began to chase away the shadows lingering in his mind. There was joy in setting a goal, joy in pushing limits, and a spark awakened that told him he could find a balance between vulnerability and strength. However, as he returned home, a chill hugged the back of his neck. The notion of confronting the group still weighed heavily. What if they were all better than him? What if he could never measure up? His apprehension brewed a storm in his heart, and he internalized the pressure of expectation. Women and men in that group likely boasted stories that would echo his own struggles. What if he found camaraderie there, strength in numbers? Or was it simply a polished facade masking hidden fears? The ticking clock on his wall propelled him toward a decision, a moment the veracity of his essence awaited. He stood before the mirror, heart pounding anew. Would he take that first step into the unknown, confronting not only the uncertainties of the group, but also the churning fears that held him in suspension? Tomorrow would be the day he decided, step into the running community or step back into the shadows. The stakes felt impossibly high. The moment of truth awaited. Would he allow fear to define him, or would he take back the narrative of his own life? With the morning sun breaking through the edges of his curtains, Jason awoke to a mix of anticipation and dread. Today felt monumental. It could either mark the beginning of a new chapter or solidify the doubts that had plagued him for years. The group run was just hours away, and he could already feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, a cocktail mixed with anxiety and hope. As he dressed, he was acutely aware of the fresh air whispered through the window. It reminded him of freedom, of possibilities yet to come. Still, each fabric he put on felt like armor against an invisible foe, a protective layer shielding him from his past fears. The mirror reflected not only his image, but the man he longed to become. Would he stand tall in the eyes of others, or would the cracks of insecurity reveal themselves once again? His fingers brushed over the journal resting on his desk. Last night's reflections, a collage of aspirations and fears, called to him. What had he written for himself just the day before? Each word penned was a thread in the tapestry of his ongoing transformation. Would he voice that newfound commitment to the running group? Breakfast felt like a ritual of balance. He savored each bite, mindfully considering what it meant to nourish his body. This wasn't just fuel for the run, it was nourishment for his spirit. He pondered over his chosen mantra, one step at a time. In that moment, every self-doubt seemed to momentarily retreat in the face of that simple truth. The clock ticked away, the minutes dissolving with each heartbeat. Finally, with a deep breath, he stepped outside. The day was alive, and so was he. He could either let the crowd intimidate him or use it as a catalyst for growth. As he approached the park, waves of runners filled his vision. To some it might seem daunting, but to him it was an ocean of potential. Laughter intertwined with the chattering voices as he navigated through the gathering crowd. Each friendly nod, each smile exchanged, seemed to erase a sliver of his apprehension. With every familiar face he spotted, he reminded himself that everyone had stories of struggle, stories that defined their journeys. But as he laced his shoes and felt the reassuring snugness around his feet, his internal voice resurfaced. What if they judge? What if I stumble? A flash of real fear gripped him, but he chose to subdue it with determination. He was no longer a prisoner of past failures. He had reclaimed his narrative. The group began to warm up, a shared energy uniting everyone in this unfamiliar yet welcoming space. Jason shuffled into place, participating mindfully in the stretches that once seemed so foreign to him. He realized the unspoken comprehension among them. Their collective commitment to improvement mirrored his own struggle and evolution. When the call to start came, Jason felt an electric charge in the air, spurring him forward. He set his pace according to others, forcing his heart to synchronize with the rhythm of feet meeting earth. Each breath filled his lungs with possibility. Each stride pulled him further from the shackles of insecurity. Then, suddenly, doubt struck again. A particularly fast runner passed him, and the familiar pang of comparison sliced through him. What if I can't keep up? This introspection shifted his focus inward, and he quickly reminded himself why he was here. It wasn't just about speed, it was about perseverance. With every mile marker he crossed, Jason began to recognize that he was not defined by comparing himself to others. Instead, he was running for himself. Each footfall transformed fear into an exhilarating surge of empowerment. His mind repainted the narrative. All those years of judgment and shame were fleeting thoughts in the face of his desire to break free. Yet as he approached the finish line of the first lap, exhilaration quickly morphed into something heavier. A palpable tension hung in the air as he turned to see others, their faces reflecting not only determination, but an urgency that mirrored his inner turmoil. Jason felt that gust of resolve shatter as his feet slowed to a jog. What was this unsettling anticipation? The path ahead held not just the finish line of the run, but also the intersection of triumph and vulnerability. As he caught his breath, he realized something deeper had tugged at him. What awaited at the end of this run? Would camaraderie unfold, or would he face another confrontation of his limits? The moment had come. He was about to approach not just physical endurance, but emotional confrontation. Jason steadied himself for whatever lay ahead, heart pounding, as he braced for the mythic leap. As the final stretch of the lap unfolded, Jason found himself confronting an unyielding truth. The finish line wasn't just a physical marker, but a crucible that would test everything he had come to embrace. As he picked up pace, determination surged within him like blood through his veins. The finish line loomed, not merely as an endpoint to the run, but as the potential inception of a greater self, one unhindered by past limitations. The runner ahead of him, a beacon of speed and endurance, shimmered like a mirage. Each stride felt heavier than the last, yet paradoxically, he was beginning to feel a different type of weight superficially lift. The latent pressure of fear slowly dissipated in the heat of his resolve. However, his heart danced a precarious tango between exhilaration and anxiety. What if he could finish strong? But what if that urgency meant something beyond the physical exertion? As he sprinted past the final marker, a rush of energy propelled him, and with a breath like a drumbeat of courage, Jason crossed the threshold of the finish line. For a fleeting moment, he reveled in an unacquainted exhilaration, the space between triumph and vulnerability. The applause of fellow runners surrounded him, resonating deeply. Yet, beneath that noise, A subtle trepidation gripped his thoughts. Were they clapping for him, or merely caught up in the celebration of completion? He slowed to a stop, hands braced on his knees, feeling the world whirl around him. Discomfort churned inside as thoughts crowded his mind, demanding clarity. Stripped bare of excuses now, he needed to confront an uncomfortable truth. What was he genuinely seeking in this journey? Breathless and thriving on an undeniable high, Jason was startled when a fellow runner approached him. Cassie, an enthusiastic member from the group, beamed at him. "That was amazing! You really pushed yourself!" Her words felt like sunlight cutting through a lingering fog. "Thanks," Jason replied, yet an echo of self-doubt whispered, the kind that had lingered for years. But did I really? The question crushed around him, seemingly trivial, yet impenetrably haunting. The difference between how he perceived his efforts compared to how others viewed him began to create a chasm, a gnawing uncertainty that left him quaking. Did his courage mean anything if he continued to measure it against some invisible standard? As conversations flowed around him, Jason caught snatches of banter among various runners, joyous reunions that piqued an unexpected pang of longing within him. What do I want from all this? He wondered. Did he yearn merely for acceptance, perhaps validation of his struggle, or was it something deeper, an intrinsic need to feel whole? A crucial decision moment lingered in the air, wrapped between his fear of inadequacy and the dawning realization that growth was an ongoing journey, not a straight path. He could choose to redefine his journey beyond the applause that echoed around him, or allow himself to remain tethered to the opinions of others. It was the kind of choice that could fundamentally alter the course of this self-discovery. "Hey, Jason!" A voice jolted him back to the present. It was Mark, another runner known for his resilience. "You should come celebrate with us at the cafe. We're ordering food. It'll be fun." Jason hesitated. Would joining them solidify the camaraderie he craved, or would it lead him to soldier through layers of self-doubt? Opening up about his struggles made him vulnerable, yet perhaps that was where real growth lay. A choice clawed for his attention, highlighting the dichotomy between isolation and connection. As he weighed the options, the pulsating energy of both fear and excitement coursing through him, the air thickened with anticipation. His decision loomed, yet its implications stretched beyond mere participation in post-run festivities. Was he ready to rebuild the bridges to connection, to embrace vulnerability that could transform his life? Jason's heart raced. With each breath, he approached the moment where he could not only redefine himself collectively, but also confront who he truly was beneath the facades he'd erected. As he stood at the ruby-hued junction of past insecurities and future possibilities, a chance for revelation glimmered just ahead. And just as the decision simmered at the forefront of his mind, a voice from the edge of the crowd echoed a sentiment that would define this journey ahead. This isn't just about running, it's about who you become in the process. As Jason stood suspended between choices, he lingered on those words, feeling the weight of his impending choice press down on him. He took a deep breath, ready for whatever came next, yet an undeniable uncertainty still hung benevolently in the air. What lay beyond this threshold of connection? Would his commitment to vulnerability propel him into uncharted territory of personal awakening, or would he retreat back into the shadows of his past? Jason inhaled deeply, the scent of sweat mingling with freshly cut grass creating an intoxicating atmosphere filled with potential. He knew he stood at the precipice of something monumental. The laughter of fellow runners swirled around him, a chorus of camaraderie, yet he lingered at the edges of this celebration, a spectator grappling with the intensity of his internal struggle. "Come on, man!" Mark's voice broke through the haze, pulling him back to the moment. "You'll have fun, I promise." Jason hesitated, caught in a paradox. The prospect of sharing a moment with others invoked both temptation and dread. What if he revealed too much? What if vulnerability was seen as weakness? However, the yearning for connection clawed at him, a hunger he could no longer ignore. He could feel the weight of decisions yet to be made. It pulled against his resolve. Just a moment, he thought. This can be a step. Just one step. With that mental nudge, he forced a smile. Okay, let's go, he said, trying to suppress the tremor in his voice. As they walked toward the cafe, Jason's mind raced. Conversations flowed around him, yet he focused on the sound of his own thoughts. What did it mean to truly connect? And why did this feel so monumental? In the past, he would have dismissed these interactions, retreating into solitude, afraid to confront his own inadequacies. But now, there was a societal yearning and a budding promise within him to explore these relationships. Once inside the cafe, the vibrant ambiance juxtaposed sharply against his inner turmoil. The warm buzz of chatter and the aroma of food enveloped him. It was overwhelming, yet also oddly comforting. He was acutely aware of the conversations unfolding around him, snippets of laughter and shared stories. In that tapestry of noise, Jason fitted himself with shaky threads of confidence. "Hey, Jason!" a voice called out from across the cafe. It was Cassie again, beckoning him over to a table where a group of runners sat chatting. "You totally crushed it out there." With each step towards the group, the familiar butterflies returned, but this time they carried a tinge of excitement rather than dread. He lowered himself into a chair. The act itself felt monumental, a declaration to himself that he was worthy of this space. They welcomed him warmly, their voices mingling with animated energy. Yet a part of him felt like an outsider. As conversations flowed, his mind wandered, conflicted. While they spoke of routines and future races, Jason felt tethered to an inherent vulnerability. Would he dare to share his journey, the struggles he had faced, the doubts that clung to him like shadows? Jason watched as Mark effortlessly recounted tales of his running successes, the laughter of the group reinforcing his self-belief. In contrast, Jason felt exposed, like a fragile bubble ready to burst. This gathering, meant for celebration, suddenly morphed into a trial of self-esteem. Amid the noise, he began to confront a thought. What if sharing his truth could transform the way he perceived himself? With a flicker of determination, Jason cleared his throat, his voice slightly steadier than before. "So, I wanted to talk about the fears that creep in sometimes." As he spoke, he began to uncover layers of his own identity he had long buried, uncovering hidden complexities that revealed vulnerabilities he once shied away from. With each word, those complexities evolved into empowerment, a stark shift in his engagement with himself and those around him. Circling back, he felt their eyes on him, not with judgment, but with understanding. It was liberating. Perhaps he wasn't just there to run, but to discover new depths of strength within himself, strength not solely defined by finishing faster or pushing harder, but also through honest connection. Just as Cassie chimed in, affirming his bravery, Jason's awareness rapidly expanded. He was experiencing an emotional awakening, shifting from fear to authenticity. And here, in this little cafe, a new aspect of his identity was dawning. Yet, as applause echoed through his mind, a product of newfound camaraderie, he sensed a growing question hovering just on the edge of his consciousness. Was this merely the beginning? Would these connections push him further, unveiling even more profound aspects of his identity? As the group leaned in, eager to listen and share stories, Jason felt the weight of what lay ahead, both thrilling and daunting. The struggle between self-discovery and fear danced within him, igniting an internal flame. Undeterred, he leaned into that warmth, embracing the evolution that sparked between him and those around him. He thought of the potential ramifications. With this newfound resolve, what transformations awaited him in the landscape of his life? How might these connections reshape his journey? And as Jason allowed the anticipation of these experiences to settle within him, uncertainty slipped into clarity. The journey had only just begun, revealing a road he was both ready to explore and terrified to navigate. Would the bond formed in vulnerability lead him to fortify his spirit or break him open? Jason's heart buzzed with energy as his words hung in the air, a fragile thread binding him to a growing circle of steadfast support. He felt a shift not just within himself, but resonating through the group, each member recognizing the courage it took to unveil elements of one's deeper self. He realized for the first time the magic of vulnerability. It wasn't merely an admission of weakness, but a way to inspire strength. Mark leaned closer, his expression sincere. "Man, we all have fears. It's part of the process. You're not alone in this." That affirmation stoked the embers of Jason's burgeoning confidence. He absorbed the warmth radiating from the group. Their encouragement ignited an enthusiasm for a deeper dialogue about not only running, but life's larger race. As conversations continued, Jason recognized his previous iterations as a solitary runner, isolated by fear, too hesitant to share scars. Now, surrounded by laughter and emboldened voices, he saw the path of collective experience. Each tale of challenge, whether it was the grueling phase of training or the mental blocks they faced on runs, illustrated a painful beauty he had always overlooked. Driven by a profound need to explore further, Jason shared more about his experiences. Every word became a step forward, unfolding layers of self-awareness he had long since buried. His observations flowed with colors infused with hope, courage, and at times, an unanticipated humor. With every confession, the shadows of his life seemed to recede, just enough to allow the light to peek through. Moments turned to stories, and soon the conversation pivoted to future goals. Cassie chimed in with an infectious enthusiasm. "We should all train for that half marathon in a few months. It'd be awesome to tackle it together." The idea thrummed in Jason's chest like the steady beat of a well-timed stride. A half marathon, a leap, a commitment, a chance to solidify this new bond. Could he become part of this expanding circle, not merely as a participant, but as a pillar entirely woven into the collective fabric of determination? Jason wrestled internally with the implications. The notion of enlisting in something larger than himself felt thrilling, yet there lingered the specter of fear. What if he faltered? But the mental gymnastics he had played before were interrupted by the strength he found emanating from his newfound friends. Together, they forged a path not just towards a race, but towards resilience and growth. "Count me in," he finally declared, and the collective cheer erupted like a cannon blast, cracking open his hesitations. The anticipation filled the space, no longer rooted in fear but grounded in the excitement of potential victories, both personal and collective. As he leaned back, riding the crest of this wave of affirmation, Jason noticed how this group had become a mirror reflecting hidden strengths back at him. The internal dialogues, once shackled in fears and insecurities, transformed into affirmations of capability and aspiration. Each story shared became a lesson, every laugh a reminder of his shared humanity. Yet, the swelling elation was laced with uncertainty. He still had layers to unveil, deeper shadows that stretched behind him. How deeply would he allow himself to connect? Could he fully confront the doubts and inadequacies that surfaced when faced with the prospect of serious challenge? With the adrenaline of resolution coursing through him, he acknowledged that this was more than merely signing up for a race. It was an activation of purpose and identity. A part of him understood that personal growth wasn't just a solitary expedition. It was interwoven with the dynamics of relationships built on trust and openness. As they wrapped up the evening, Jason couldn't shake a sense of impending change. An understanding blossomed within him, hinting at the complexities that lay ahead. What obstacles would test his fortitude? Would he rise to the occasion or retreat into the safe embrace of his previous fears? The thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. This newfound path held immeasurable risks, but even greater opportunities for growth. The question loomed as if suspended in time. Was he truly ready to embrace the profound challenge of not only the race ahead, but the deeper race within himself? His resolve began to solidify as he stared at the group, each face representing a different aspect of his journey. The excitement was palpable, but so was the anxiety, and as the initial thrill of vulnerability gave way to deeper introspection, Jason felt a recognition settle within him, powerful and haunting. Tomorrow would be a new day, a training run, a test of his endurance, a chance to chart progress, and a confrontation with the enduring shadows of doubt. Would he break through, or would he break down? With the sun setting through the cafe's windows, Jason braced himself for the trials that lay ahead. And deep down, he questioned, was he prepared to face not just the run, but everything that came with it? The following morning was a kaleidoscope of possibilities and doubt, each ray of sunlight chasing away the remnants of last night's revelations. As Jason laced up his running shoes, the familiar scent of the pavement met his senses, grounding him in the reality of this new commitment. It wasn't just about physical endurance anymore. It was a testament to the emotional journey he had just begun. Jason stepped outside, the chill in the air mingling with the flutter of anticipation. He was about to engage in a ritual that could either solidify his resolve or expose the chinks in his armor. The horizon called out to him, but beneath the call was an echo of latent fears. What if he wasn't strong enough? He set off with measured strides, the rhythmic pattern of his footfalls matching the racing thoughts in his mind. Each breath sent a pulse through his veins, a reminder of both the exhilaration and anxiety that accompanied his participation in the half-marathon. As he ran, the streets morphed into his testing ground, where the distance managed to stretch his limits, both physically and emotionally. The early morning sun painted the world in gold, but within Jason, clouds shifted. He encountered the first hill, its incline looming like a metaphor for his personal hurdles. Just last night, he had felt buoyed by camaraderie. Now, that support seemed a world away, swallowed by the weight of exertion. He gritted his teeth and pushed forward, feeling both the sting of his legs and the echo of his previous triumphs. Halfway up the hill, fatigue gnawed at his resolve. For a fleeting moment, memories of solitary runs crept in, stale air and self-doubt whispering harsh truths. He questioned whether this new chapter would merely be another fleeting moment of enthusiasm. Could he sustain the momentum he had generated? Suddenly, he recalled Cassie's enthusiasm. Her eagerness held a quality he sorely needed. If she could dream so freely, why couldn't he? Gritting his teeth tighter, he felt a surge of adrenaline fueled by determination. Jason lengthened his stride, visualizing the faces of his friends, their laughter from the cafe solidifying in his memory, propelling him forward. As he crested the hill, a wave of exhilaration washed over him. There was triumph in persistence, and Jason embraced it fully. However, wild exhilaration was often accompanied by whispers of doubt that crept back as the exhilaration of the climb faded. How far could he go with this newfound resolve? The course flattened into stretches of clear pavement, an invitation to transcend the runner's fatigue. He found his rhythm, an innate push within him emerging. The interactions, the shared vulnerabilities, feeding into this emergence of spirit. With each mile he conquered, doubts began to break apart, fracturing under the pressure of his focus. Yet still, the lingering question lay beneath. Would he falter when things got tough? Completing the run, Jason slowed to a walk, allowing breath to find tranquility. The end of the session was more than the completion of a run. It was a reflection of his evolving mindset. Each painful stride transformed into a lesson learned, gradually replacing fear with a tapestry of courage woven from support and vulnerability. He stood, hands on his hips, reveling in the victory, however small it may seem. Unbeknownst to him, Jason had gained more than leg strength that day. He had tapped into a deeper well of resilience. The pull of unknown challenges loomed, yet the thrill of conquest empowered him. But just as the buoyancy of his victory began to swell, a stark realization struck him. The half-marathon wasn't simply a destination. It would be a continuum of obstacles unfolding. How would he handle setbacks, doubters, and his hidden limitations? What awaited him around the next bend? As he caught his breath and absorbed the morning light, Jason sensed a shift well beyond his physical realms. The race hadn't merely begun, it had morphed into something profound and layered, revealing not just the possibility of personal success, but the essence of human connection and authenticity. He stared ahead, and the path stretched infinitely, summoning his resolve. As dark clouds hovered in the corners of his mind, he felt an exhilarating sense of clarity. Every step forward could lead him to unforeseen heights or shatter all that he had newly built. What would he face next in this unfolding race? And could he withstand the gravitational pull of self-doubt as he ventured deeper into his journey? The morning sun continued to rise, bathing the empty streets in a gentle light, yet Jason's mind was far from peaceful. He had just completed his first serious run in weeks, a physical achievement that felt substantial. But as adrenaline faded, he sensed the weight of unresolved questions hanging in the air like mist. With each passing moment in this newfound journey, the doubts grew heavier. Would he be able to maintain this pace in both running and life? The exhilaration of hitting a personal milestone was shadowed by a gnawing uncertainty about whether he could sustain this momentum. He dropped his head, pressing the palms of his hands against his temples, focusing on the surge of emotions swirling at his core. Enticed by the rhythm of his heartbeat, he began walking back home, taking deliberate steps as he mulled over the impact of his commitment. Each footfall carried evidence of something more profound than mere action. It was symbolic of his gradual progression into a person willing to confront the vulnerabilities he had long ignored. Back in his apartment, Jason sat with a pen in hand, filling page after page of his notebook with thoughts as they poured out, a detoxification of sorts. He wrote about the run, its triumphs, and the intimate battle against doubts. Yet within the ink, he discerned traces of another struggle, a denial of his own potential. Words suffered under the weight of internal conflict. What if he would always be trapped here, wrestling with expectations that felt insurmountable? The turning point came in the form of a text from Cassie, a reminder of their shared passion for the marathon. Her message was peppered with excitement about training schedules and playlists. Jason's heart quickened as he absorbed her words. Something remarkable began to stir within him, kindling a flame he thought had long extinguished, an urge to be better, not just for himself, but to prove to Cassie that he could rise beyond self-imposed limitations. Instead of waiting for motivation to find him passively, Jason decided that he would be proactive. He crafted a workout schedule for the week ahead, aiming to blend strength training with his running. The plan was ambitious but comprehensive, incorporating exercises specifically targeted at building strength that had waned with age. With each entry he devised, the once overbearing doubts transformed into tangible tasks, changing from abstract fears into achievable goals. As new clarity enveloped him, Jason made a mental note to confront his biggest challenge, his fear of failure. He had been conditioned to view setbacks as evidence of inadequacy, yet he questioned this narrative profoundly. Why shouldn't he embrace failure as part of the growth process? It was time to redefine his relationship with disappointment. While sharpening a pencil to jot down a motivational quote, Jason paused. The belief he had once placed solely in running was now spilling over into the facets of his life that required attention. Work, relationships, and personal aspirations all carried overlooked potential begging for acknowledgement. Could he begin to apply the same principles of perseverance and vulnerability he practiced while running to the broader picture? As dusk began to settle outside, Jason felt a newfound sense of urgency envelop him. He understood now that each pursuit of his dreams would inevitably be intertwined with adversity, but it was his responsibility to meet it with resolve. Yet, just as hope began to flourish, a bitter reality loomed. What if his efforts to change, and the failures that would undeniably accompany them, shook his relationships to their core? The thought hovered over him like a thundercloud pregnant with rain, forcing him to confront how far he was willing to go in this transformative quest. In that moment of reflection, Jason felt the stirrings of resolve once again. He would no longer sidestep challenges. He would actively seek them out. Life, like a marathon, promised a course filled with unexpected turns. What awaited him on this uncharted path, and could he withstand the turbulent trials threatening to engulf him just as he was finding his footing? With the dawn of a new day, Jason stood before the mirror, feeling an unfamiliar jolt of determination coursing through his veins. The challenges he had faced in recent weeks transformed into badges of honor rather than burdens. He had redefined strength, not merely in the weight he could lift or the distances he could run, but in the very act of confronting his vulnerabilities head-on. His workout schedule, scrawled across the pages of his notebook, no longer seemed like a list of daunting tasks. Instead, it felt like a roadmap to reclaiming not just his physical prowess, but to embolden every facet of his life. He understood that each run was not simply about miles covered, but about forging connections, to himself, to others, and to the resilience that lived within him. That Saturday morning, the air was crisp, and with every breath, Jason felt the energy of possibility enveloping him. As he prepared for his weekly running group, a wave of excitement surged unexpectedly. No longer was he the man tethered by self-doubt. He was a fighter stepping onto the starting line of his own life, ready to conquer not just the physical miles ahead, but the emotional terrains as well. Upon arriving at the park, laughter and camaraderie rippled through the gathering crowd. Faces, once familiar but distant, now felt like cherished companions on this journey of transformation. Jason sought out Cassie, her enthusiasm igniting renewed vigor within him. Together, they discussed not only their training regimens, but shared aspirations beyond running, career goals, family visions, and dreams once etched in the background, now demanding the forefront. As they broke into their run, Jason felt lighter, unburdened by expectations that had long held him hostage. With each mile, he sensed a shifting tide in his heart. The familiar scenery now brimmed with opportunities rather than reminders of past failures. He had conquered the hills, and with exhilarating stride, he embraced the flat stretches that once felt daunting. The rhythm of the group pulsed like a heartbeat, a collective affirmation that he was part of something worth pursuing. Amid their run, Jason recognized the significance of authenticity. Sharing laughter, insecurities, and aspirations established a bond of mutual respect. Mark frequently shared motivational quotes that fueled their energies, yet it was Jason's own vulnerability that became the spark for deeper conversations. Each twinge of pride felt attached not only to individual accomplishments, but to the collective advance toward a shared goal, the half-marathon looming on the horizon. As their group wrapped up the session, a gathered circle filled with exhaustion and elation emerged. They shared stories of perseverance and the thrill of working towards something substantial together. It was a heartening reminder that their struggles were not solitary. They formed a tapestry of determination. Jason felt embraced, his heart swelling with a sense of belonging he had sorely missed. "Remember," Cassie said, her voice clear amid the chatter, "it's not just about the race, it's about who we become along the way." Those words struck him like a thunderclap, an unmistakable truth that coalesced with his evolution. Jason had stepped onto this journey not just to reclaim his leg strength, but to cultivate the legacy of connection he wished to leave behind. He was building a future filled with intentionality, vigor, and authenticity. That evening, back home, Jason felt a profound shift within himself. He reframed the notion of setbacks, embraced them even. They were merely footholds along a steeper path, vital for his ascent. Each moment of vulnerability, be it in sharing his aspirations or confronting failures, offered the granular realizations he needed. He could embrace both triumph and disappointment, not as opposites, but as allies on his journey to fulfillment. Days turned into weeks, and as the running group geared up for their upcoming half-marathon, the atmosphere simmered with excitement and purpose. Jason trained with laser focus, relishing in each stride he took, yet with growing complexity. It wasn't merely about crossing the finish line, but about defining his identity without hesitation. The whispers of doubt felt softer now, muted against the chorus of affirmation from his companions. At the starting line of the half-marathon, with adrenaline roaring through his body, Jason felt alive. He stood among his fellow runners, facing the horizon filled with possibilities. With the gunshot signaling the start, he took off, not just as a participant seeking a medal, but as a man resolutely reclaiming his story, one step at a time. As he moved forward, Jason's reflection remained clear. With every mile passed, he was no longer alone. He was part of a collective strength built from shared dreams. The journey had forged an unbreakable bond, not just to running, but to a community of resilience and tenacity. He was a man renewed, now standing tall in the fullness of his truth. And as he crossed the finish line, surrounded by applause and cheers, he understood it wasn't the completion itself that validated his experience. It was the realization that this journey of transformation was ongoing. He had become an athlete of life, sharpening his focus on growth by embracing challenges, harnessing connections, and lifting others as they pursued their own paths. Today was merely the beginning of a much deeper journey ahead. Today, he achieved not just leg strength, but strength of spirit, the transformative power of vulnerability, and the exhilarating nature of connection. As the race faded behind him, the road ahead blossomed with promise, and the ache of fulfillment settled warmly in his chest. This was not only his personal victory, it was a testament to the power of resilience and authentic connection, shaping the life he desired to lead. From this moment onward, he would rise. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. They need your encouragement. Comment with your reactions and theories about this triumphant conclusion. And remember, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of personal transformation in action. Don't wait even one more second to share the inspiration.